Hey friends, Scott Sullivan here, Discipleship Catalyst, Georgia Baptist Mission Board. And today I'm joined with one of my favorite people on the planet, Dr. Tim Smith. He's going to be guiding our discussion today. But we are blessed and super excited to have Tim Brady with us and Chris Surratt. So I'll let those guys tell you what they're doing at Lifeway. But and there's been a lot that's been happening at Lifeway. So I'm telling you what these guys are doing, the resources they're putting out is really just unparalleled compared to where we have been coming into the last 2 months. So Ken and Chris, I'm gonna say it again at the end, but thank you for the time and energy that you guys are putting into product and resources and blessing local churches. Now, for those of you that are viewing today, make sure that you comment below, because we're gonna be, just like we do every broadcast, we're gonna give some free swag away. We want to bless you. We want to send things your way. And what we're going to send today, we're going to send a copy of Ken's newest book, Breathing Life into Sunday School. And then this is what that one actually looks like. And then Chris has a copy of his book. He'll show up, and we're going to give that one to you as well. And that's Leading Small Groups. So you got both perspectives here, but I'm telling you, these are rich resources. Super excited to have you guys. Tim, take charge and guide us through.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate everybody joining us, and make sure you do comment. Let us know where you're watching this from, and you'll get into the conversation, and also the opportunity to win those great resources. The title of this is Creating Better Online Bible Study or Group Experiences for Adults. And you know, it's been interesting as we've kind of gone through this, that there's been some funny and some embarrassing moments. You know, I was doing one of these and had a guy that fell asleep. You know, we're sitting there watching him. And thankfully, he was either muted or he wasn't snoring. I was doing one the other day and had, it was nighttime, and here's this pastor, and his wife walks behind him, got on her robe, and her hair's up in the towel from her shower. You know, just crazy things that have been happening. So Chris and Ken, we'll start with Chris. What has been the funniest or most embarrassing thing that has happened to you online during this COVID-19 time?
Well, thanks, Tim. It's good to start with something embarrassing or funny. That's a good way to kick it off. But actually, I haven't had anything extremely embarrassing or funny. I think we were a little bit prepared because we do a lot of meetings via Zoom at Lifeway already. And so, you know, we kind of know how to frame the picture and be ready for things. But kind of embarrassing and hard during the beginning of it, my Wi-Fi was not handling the load with everybody being at home, because I've got two girls now at home, one that's doing high school, another one that was doing college via online. My wife is a full-time bookkeeper. I'm actually in her office right now. She usually works right behind me. So everything was just maxing out the Wi-Fi. And I was doing a webinar for some friends in England, in the UK, and really excited about it, and got to the part where they said, "Hey, Chris, we're so glad to have you. Why don't you introduce yourself?" And my Wi-Fi went gone. And this was a live webinar. There was no re-recording, no anything. It was just gone. So I had to scramble, get my phone, get on through the cell data, download the app. I mean, it took probably 10 minutes for me to get back on, but yeah, that was my experience.
Ken, how about for you? What's been your most embarrassing or funniest experience online during this time?
Hey, Tim, this is an easy one. And hey, Scott, we were doing our second group Bible study from our church on Zoom, and we had about 5 or 6 couples in the meeting. So not a bad start to our season of online Bible study. And you know, when you get online, not everybody remembers to mute their microphone, right? And so we start hearing, you know, background noise. It's not bad. We can't really tell, you know, where it's coming from. But then all of a sudden we hear this, wee, wee, you know, and we're like, what is this? And one of the couples apologized, and they hit mute. They said, that's us. They hit mute. And then they came back in just a second, and each of them, the husband and the wife, both held up little piglets that they had bought for their daughters. And these little piglets were just running around the house. And evidently, when you pick up a piglet, it likes to squeal. And so they interrupted the meeting, and then everybody, of course, wanted to see them. So, hey, hold them up to the screen. And it was like, Bible study's over, groups ruined, let's just do prayer requests, because at that point we were just all, we all wanted to go out and buy little piglets.
Yeah, I heard the other day that, they're doing the Supreme Court online, and they were having some questions and arguments and whatever. And there they were, the Supreme Court, and somebody's toilet flushed live for the world to hear. So it has been an interesting time.
And Tim,
Hey.
let me mention something right here that you were a part of.
Uh-oh.
So we're talking to our discipleship team, and I'm on the road, man. I'm headed home, so I'm taking my video off, and I'm just audio, right? Get out of the car, come in the house. Well, I'm washing my hands. Well, I put the phone on mute, I thought, right? So I'm washing my hands in the office there, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, dude, I can't believe you're using the restroom while you're on the phone with us. I'm like, I'm not, I'm washing my hands. They said, we know you are. I said, you're fired.
Yeah, it has been some interesting and fun times, no doubt. Hey, let's do this. Let's talk about the best practices for re-engaging our members and prospects through online groups. And Ken, we'll start with you. What are some best practices to re-engage our members and our prospects through online groups? And tell the folks what you do at Lifeway, please, sir.
What do I do? Well, for the last decade, I have had the privilege of managing our adult ongoing curriculum. So that's just another way of saying Sunday school curriculum for adults. And that includes things like Explore the Bible, Bible Studies for Life, Gospel Project, Masterwork, and all the commentaries and things that go with that, the leader packs and whatnot. But this last October, I had the privilege of receiving another job, and that is the role of Sunday school director. And so now I use that position to be an advocate for Sunday school for all age groups around the country. I get to write and blog and speak and do things like this and support our state conventions. And so that's been a wonderful privilege. So those are my two jobs right now at Lifeway. And you've asked a great question about re-engaging people that are in our groups. And so I've got a couple of thoughts. I still think, Tim, the number one reason that people come to a group, whether it's an online group or it's a group on campus, is through the personal invitation of somebody that they know. It's still, it's a very powerful factor. So I think we see people online right now coming into the online groups and growing our Bible study groups simply because somebody in the group says, hey, my group's meeting Sunday morning at 10 or, Tuesday night at 8. Here's the link. Why don't you come join us? And it gives them an easy in to join the group. I also know that right now, because we're getting ready, it looks like, to reopen churches. You're getting ready to reopen in Georgia. We're reopening in Tennessee this month. And so we're starting to wonder, how do we re-engage people that have been now sequestered for 8 weeks or kind of have gotten used to online groups? And so, porch visits, honestly, Tim, where you can go distribute a study guide and say, hey, look, here's what our group's using. And, whether you come back on campus or you stay with us online, it just gives us an opportunity to re-engage somebody that may have stepped away for a little bit of a time. So I love that. And also I'll end on this one. It's good for the group leader to do the reaching out, but it's even more powerful when a group member reaches out to somebody that's been absent or a little bit on the fringe, because folks may think, well, that's the teacher's job to reach out to me, but if a group member reaches out and says, hey, I want you to engage with my group. I've got a great Bible study group and you need to come be a part of this. That's even more powerful than when a group leader reaches out.
That's right. Chris, how about you? What are some best practices for re-engaging our members and even those who are not in our group during this time with an online group?
Sure. And I'm the small group specialist at Lifeway, so I get to talk about small groups all the time, which I love, and do a lot of writing and co-host a podcast called Group Answers with Brian Daniel at Lifeway. So that's kind of what I do for my day job. But just a couple of practical suggestions for groups. Most groups have been doing online for a little while now, for at least a few weeks. My group has done several meetings online. So I think people are getting used to the idea of having a group experience online. But I hear from churches that there's still people that are not engaging as much as they'd like for them to online, whether they're not ready for the technology or they just don't feel like it's a good community experience. So one thing I would suggest is offering options for engaging that online community. For instance, I know with Zoom and some of the other online conferencing tools, you can call in instead of videoing in. And so I've talked to some groups that have had some success with, especially maybe older folks in their group that are not technologically prepared to do a Zoom meeting, but they can make a phone call. And so doing a phone call or doing one group meeting that's all on phone. So everybody does it that way. So if somebody's not ready for a video experience, they might be able to try that at first. Also, another thing is just varying the format of how you're doing your groups. I found, after doing a few of these, that they can get very monotonous. You have the same kind of look, the same thing. And so just changing the order maybe that you do your group in. And then I discovered the other day, I did a webinar for another guy, and he used a tool or an online conferencing tool called Icebreaker that I'd never heard of. And it's just a fun, different version of a Zoom format where you have people up front kind of on a stage sort of, and then you can give questions and it breaks people off into automatic breakout rooms with each other to talk about them. They come back. It's just a different way of doing it. So I would encourage you, if you've been doing it for a few weeks, maybe look at some different options for doing it differently next time.
Well, that's fabulous. I appreciate you answering that question there. One of the things that comes to my mind that's been a struggle, guys, is when you talk about discussion and based on groups, how do you deal with those discussions that are based on group, or how do you ask questions that allow for discussion without talking over each other? In the face-to-face meeting, that's something that we all struggle with. You always have that one that's trying to talk over, but in these, with delays and that sort of thing, we'd love for y'all to address that. And let's start, Chris, with you.
Sure. Yeah, it's a different kind of environment, isn't it? I mean, you can't, 2 or 3 people can't jump in at the same time. Then it gets awkward. Who goes first? Who waits? And it's just different. And so I think one key is at the beginning to have expectations of what it's like. I know that with our church, they sent out kind of a list of here's how to have an effective online meeting. I helped write one of those at the very beginning of all this, and just setting the expectations at the front that we're not going to be able to talk all at the same time. We're going to have some different kind of social cues online than we do in person. I can't just look at Tim right now and expect Tim to understand that I'm talking right to him. That just doesn't happen online. So we have to understand that going into it. And then there's some different kind of cues that you can use. I know some people use raising your hand. So if you've got an answer to a question, raise your hand, which requires the host to be a little bit more active in facilitating the conversation than in an in-person meeting. So you're calling on somebody more often. And then, if you're using Zoom, there's features like raising your hand that you can add to it. That's actually, you can click it and somebody raise their hand, or you can use the chat feature. But I think the most important thing is just right up front, say this is going to be different. It's okay. We understand that. Here's some ways that we can work within those barriers of being online.
That's great. Kim, what would be your idea in helping folks to keep from talking over one another?
Well, you're going to find that Chris and I are thinking very similarly about that because I think 3 of the 4 things that I was going to mention, I think Chris just did. And so, it just shows you how similar small groups and Sunday school groups are really, that close in what they do. So one tool that you can use when you're in an online group, one trick you can use is to just call on a specific person, and that keeps a lot of chatter and cross traffic from happening. And so you might say, hey, Scott, when was the last time, you took a sour circumstance and made lemonade out of it, and it just signals to the group, I'm looking for you, to answer that question. So I probably should not have other folks that are jumping in. I do like the Zoom feature, where you can actually raise a hand in Zoom. You do it on the participants button, and you can, actually, do it electronically. But it's also, if you're in a gallery view, like Chris mentioned, you can just physically raise a hand and the group leader hopefully is alert to that, and we'll see that happen. And then you've got the chat feature that Chris mentioned. You can just ask a question in chat, have that running on the side, and as you see those questions pop up, just tell your folks, hey, I'll address these as we go through. I've been in some Zoom Bible studies lately, that there is that opportunity when people talk over one another, and usually somebody says, oh, you go first, and that person yields, the other guy or the gal talks, and then the other person had to wait gets their turn, and it's really not been very awkward. It's not too dissimilar for what could happen in a live in the same room kind of a group setting.
Yeah, my group, when we met on campus on Sunday mornings, we averaged about 14 in attendance, and we've been online for 8 or 9 weeks, and our average attendance has been 34. And so we've had the problem of, and we're discussion based, and we've had the problem of talking over each other. And so what we did is we just started taking the list of the participants and working down that list, and we would call out 2 or 3 names, and we'd say, Scott and Chris, this question's for you. And then we'd ask the question, and that kept us from talking over each other. And so that can happen. So thank you for helping us with that. Hey, the question I've heard from a lot of pastors, because we started this thing, and the first phase was we got to get our worship services online, and then the next phase was we got to get our giving online, and then the third phase was, hey, we got to get our groups online, and now the pastors are looking at me and say, hey, we got to help our groups be better online. And so that's what we're trying to do. And so do our members need to be prepared? Does that help with the online experience? And if it does help, how do we get them to be ready for our group time? And so Ken, we'll start with you on that one.
Sure. So an education hero of mine is Dr. Robert Pasmino, and in one of his books on Christian teaching, he delivered an illustration from his life. His son went to culinary school and became a chef. And one Thanksgiving was going to prepare a dish of Brussels sprouts for the family. And Dr. Pasmino's like, why are you doing that? Nobody's going to want Brussels sprouts. They're terrible. And the son said, well, why don't you come over and let me show you how we're going to make these things. He said, I promise, these will be great, and everybody's going to love them. So Dr. Pasmino goes over to his kid's house, and here's his son preparing the Brussels sprouts. And he gives Dr. Pasmino this little tool where he is actually assigned the task of coring out that little bitter middle part, and they wrap them in bacon and stuff them with something and put them in the oven, and bake them for a while. And he said it was the absolute best dish of side dish that they had ever had with a meal. All that to say, Dr. Pasmino said, I learned a really good lesson. And he said, it's all about the preparation. It's what you do to prepare that makes the difference. And so that works, I think, on the teacher side of things, but it also, I think, does work on the group member side of things, because they will come in better prepared. They may have questions about the text that they just won't think of in the middle of the Bible study. So I think preparation does give them opportunity to let things kind of be mulled over in their own mind, and they will come in and it will enhance what happens in the Bible study. And so how would you do that? Well, so selfishly, says the guy from Lifeway who creates Bible study products, I want my group members, I want them using their personal study guide. I want them to read that during the week. There are questions and prompts in there that will kind of get them thinking about those kinds of questions they can bring to the group, things that they don't understand that they can ask their teacher. And so I love, when groups that are online are using those study guides, just like they would use them in class, Tim. I think that's still a very important tool. So we're planning at our church, as we reopen just worship, we're going to have our study guides available on tables. People will pick those up as they leave, and they'll have those in their hands for their online groups the next week. So I think that's a great tool that we don't need to overlook even during a COVID-19 off-campus Bible study.
Chris, how about you? How do we help our members get prepared for their online group time?
Sure. I think that is important. I talked earlier about having expectations for what it's like to be online. So that's one way to prepare your group for what an online experience is. And then a lot of small groups do short-term Bible studies, we call, with a video enhanced teaching as a part of it. Well, it's awkward to watch a video together online, which you think it wouldn't be that bad because we're already staring at a screen, but getting the technology to work and just staring at a screen to watch another screen is just a little bit of a weird experience. And plus, with an online group experience, they're normally shorter. You're not going to go, hour and a half, couple hours, because that's a long time. So if you have a video that goes 20 minutes, 30 minutes, that takes up a big chunk of your group time. So I encourage groups to send out the video ahead of time for group members to be able to watch it, be ready. Just from Lifeway, smallgroup.com allows you to do that easily. You can send it out to all of your group members, say, hey, watch this before we have our group meeting this week. So that helps prepare them. A lot of groups right now are doing message-based studies because that's a little bit easier online. You're not watching a video. Well, now it's easy just to tell people to watch the message. If you missed it on Sunday, it's on demand for most churches online now, so you can go watch that ahead of time. So just being prepared with the teaching portion before you have the online group experience.
That's a good word. I'm sitting here taking notes all the way through this. It's a little hard to guide this discussion because I want to just listen to every word that you guys are saying. This is huge. Now, this next question I have for you is really critical because privacy and security of these online groups is really critical. Had a friend email me the other day saying that he was in a group with his church and somebody had hacked in and uploaded pornography, and just, you can imagine the devastation of what that was for that group. So the question is, how do you keep hackers out of your group gathering online? Chris, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I think it's less of a big deal than it was at the very beginning. I know my daughter with her online classes had some, they call them Zoom bombs, people just dropping into the chat. Luckily hers weren't really bad. It was just some other kids trying to cause some trouble. But since then, if you're using Zoom, they've put in a lot of features that secure the meetings. At the beginning, I know a lot of people were just putting their Zoom link out like on Facebook and say, hey, jump on this. We're going to have a meeting in a couple days, and you just can't do that. That's just not a good way to go. And so now making it personal invites. Also, Zoom has made every meeting automatically with a password. And so they have to have a password to jump in. And another feature that's been great for me as I've hosted webinars is the waiting room feature, where you can set up your meeting or your webinar where people first have to go into a waiting room, and then you allow them manually into your meeting. And that's, for a small group, that's easy to do. You've got 10, 15, 20 people. It's pretty easy. You can let them all in at one time if you can see it's all your group members, or one at a time. So there are some security features that I know at least Zoom has put into place. But the biggest one for me is just don't make the link public.
That's good. I mean, that tool of being able to have people admitted into it has been really just a game saver for us as we've done things. Ken, do you have any other additional ideas on how to keep people from hacking your groups?
Yeah, Chris has mentioned some big ones. The password, of course, and then you don't share the meeting link and password online and social media. You just share it with people you know. But beyond that, you can also disable screen sharing of the participants. That's a Zoom setting. And that keeps somebody that comes into your group that maybe you think they're safe, but they're in there to throw something up on the screen. Well, you can disable screen sharing on their end, and they can't do that. That'd be a frustration, to someone that's coming in to hack the meeting. You can also make sure that you don't have people that are using virtual backgrounds. In Zoom, you've got a few backgrounds like the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, or some other things. There's like a scene of a beach, and it's not a good practice to use those virtual backgrounds, because the virtual backgrounds can also be hijacked. And then all of a sudden you've got something on the screen that you don't want everyone seeing. And then the last one I'll mention is just disable file sharing, because if someone comes into your group, they could introduce a file that's got images on it you don't want them to see, or malware and those kind of things. So just disable file sharing. And those are all settings inside of Zoom. There's just a one click. And once you got that, you've set up a pretty secure meeting. And you can never totally probably safeguard the meeting, but you can almost make it airtight if you'll just take a few seconds to make some of these security measures a reality for the group.
Yeah, that's That's a great point. And we do have to make it safe. And it is, you want to make it public. You want to invite everybody to come, but you can't put it out there and make it public. Hey, and Ken, we'll start with you on this one. How is teaching a group online different from teaching a group in person on campus? How's it different, but how's it the same?
Well, it's different in that I don't have to wear pants. I say that kind of facetiously. But the Zoom meetings I've been in, have been very casual. I mean, we've had folks doing Bible study in pajamas and sweatshirts, and so it's super casual. You would probably not see that, in a classroom setting at church. So people have really kind of geared down. That's different that way. You can't interact physically, so you can't reach over, touch somebody. You can't pass something across the room, so there's just no physical contact. That's also different. I think somebody's already mentioned, I think maybe it was Scott, that attention spans are shorter. So if we're in a Bible study group, I could teach for 35, 40 minutes and then save, 15, 20 minutes for a prayer request and announcements, and then go to church, go to worship. Online, I'm having to limit my Bible study to about 20, 22 minutes because we've got, kids that come running into rooms, or, the random dog walks through, or squealing pigs, and then all of a sudden meeting's over, and that kind of thing. And so I think group leaders that are online are finding they've got to take their material, and although it's very counterintuitive, they've got to craft a Bible study that's around 20, 22 minutes to give their groups another 15, 20 minutes or so for fellowship. And the groups are really wanting to talk and engage because they've not seen each other. So that's how it's a little bit different. And I think assimilation of the newer people that are coming into your group, you really have to be very intentional, Tim, about assimilating folks. It's one thing to have them visiting your group for the Bible study, but you want them to become part of that community. So who is going to reach out to that person and really try to make friends virtually, and to invite them back, and those kind of things? I think that's some of the ways it's different. I may let Chris talk about some of the ways that it could be similar, but those are just a few thoughts about how things are going to be different, or are different online.
Yeah, I agree with Ken. I think when it comes to a small group experience, it's a little bit more similar than probably a kind of a Sunday school teaching experience, because most small groups, the small group leader or facilitator is not going to be doing the teaching. It's either done by video, or they're using notes from the message, things like that. And so the online experience doesn't differ too much from that. Now, where it does differ is the facilitator, and I talked about that earlier, has to be a little bit more active in the conversation. So when I train group leaders, normally we kind of use the 30% rule, that you should be talking about 30% of the time during a discussion to allow the group to enter into it. So that means starting with a question and then kind of letting it hang there for somebody just to answer. And I always encourage group leaders, wait about 45 to 60 seconds, and it's going to get uncomfortable, but somebody is going to answer it. There is somebody in the group that just can't let that happen. Well, it's a little bit different online. You can ask a question and let it hang, and it may be 5 minutes for some groups, before somebody is willing to jump in. And especially if it's a newer type group, you're not comfortable with the setup yet. And so, just like we said before, a facilitator may have to go, hey, Scott, what do you think about this? Or what are your thoughts on this? Instead of just letting the question hang out there for people to answer. So a little bit of the same format, but you have to be a little bit more direct, a little bit more active when it comes to your facilitation online than you would in an in-person group.
That's great. And here's the last one for our discussion. Chris, we're going to start with you on this one. And both of y'all have mentioned, a time frame, 20, 25 minutes for a group experience online. Well, what does that look like? What are the elements of a online group experience for adults, and how much time should we give to each of those elements? So Chris, we'll start with you.
Sure. And my thoughts come from just experimenting with my own personal group. Going into it, I had never really done an online exclusive group before. And so we've kind of learned as we've gone along, but the format that we're using now is about 45 minutes to an hour. Our normal group time goes about 2 hours in our house. And we found that about 45 minutes to an hour is about what people can take. You know, they're on Zoom meetings all day long. They're staring at little screens. And so there's something called Zoom fatigue that I've written about. It's real. And so if you go too long, you know, I see you, Tim, so yeah, you feel it. We all feel it. And so you have to shorten that up. So kind of the format that I've discovered is we'll spend about 5 to 10 minutes just catching up because we're not seeing each other at church. We're not seeing each other out in the community really. So there has to be some time at the beginning of just, how are you doing? What'd you do this last week? You know, how are you holding up? And then a little bit of a topic set up, which is about 5 minutes of this is what we're talking about. Did you watch the video this week? Did you watch, for us, did you watch the message? And then the discussion is about 20 to 25 minutes of the time, you know, kind of working through about 3 or 4 questions. That's about as many as we get to normally, when we usually would do like maybe 6 questions. And then a prayer time at the end, which is about, that takes up a more time than I thought, actually, because people have needs. They're struggling right now. So we will take 10, 15 minutes, and then just a quick bye at the end, about 5 minutes. But all of that, about 45 minutes to an hour.
Ken, how about you? What are the elements, and how much time do we need to give to those in a group online experience?
Well, watch how similar this is going to be to Chris, because I didn't know what he was going to say. But the groups that I've been in during our COVID sequestering have typically had 5 or 10 minutes up front for fellowship time. People really do want to talk right now because they're missing their friends, and they're excited to see faces again and whatnot. And so 5 to 10 minutes of fellowship, it allows some of the latecomers to straggle in as well, you know, as they're coming in for Bible study. That's one of those similar things to groups on campus. We still can't get to even online groups on time. And that, you know, upfront fellowship time for about 5 or 10 minutes. And then, you know, whether you do prayer, you jump right into the study. I think Chris is right. I think the prayer request portion is around 10, 12, 15 minutes. It just depends on the group. But I'm going to mention here, you know, the breakout room feature is an awesome feature. If you've got a group of, you know, 12 or 15 people, Zoom will break them out for you, or you can do it yourself. But that could be a way to end a meeting, or in the middle of the meeting, just send 3 or 4 people off to breakout rooms, let them pray, and then it'll do a countdown for you. You know, give them 10 minutes, and it'll give them a 1-minute countdown. Then come back in, and then you can start your Bible study group. Your Bible study time. But for the Bible study portion, again, we're finding 20, 22 or so minutes is about right. And so when you put it all together, you're probably at the 45 or so minute mark for a pretty complete study experience. But here's one thing that I'm seeing our group do, which I think is actually kind of smart. And I'm not doing it because I've turned my group over to my apprentice, and he's now teaching, but he's leaving the Zoom meeting on at the end, just in case anybody just wants to linger and hang around for another 5 or 6, 7 minutes and just kind of catch up, which I thought was a really good move on his part. And so it could be that, you know, that add another 5 or 7 minutes, you know, to a group meeting, but very similar to what Chris just said. So still the same elements that we've got in a classroom setting, but the thing that's really different is that the teaching time is cut about in half.
That's great. Hey, one of the things that I know that's different about an online group experience is I don't have anybody leaving my Sunday school class early online to go sing in the choir.
For sure.
Hey, Ken and Chris, appreciate y'all being with us and helping us with this. Again, this is in response to a lot of our pastors saying, what is it that we can do to help our groups have a better experience online? So y'all have been very helpful in doing this. So Scott, I'll turn it back over to you, brother.
Yes, and I echo those same sentiments. Ken, Chris, thank you for being on our panel today. And this is exactly what we were wanting, because we're not hearing as much now people saying, oh my goodness, how do I get online? Now the question is, now that I'm online, how do I do it well? Because, you know, the newness of this new toy is wearing off. And if we don't do this well, we're going to start losing attendance. So thank you for the wisdom of all these things that you have mentioned here. And I'll just leave us with this thought. There are some complications when we go online and we do a Zoom or Team or Google Hangout and we try to create these online small group Sunday school gatherings, but they're minimal. Do not let the complications keep you from this fellowship, from this Bible teaching, this investment time. I'm telling you, there's no greater time in history when these small group investments are more needed than it is right now. Our people
right.
are starved for it. So thank you so much, guys. And we will look forward to having you on another time. You guys are heroes. Thank you for Lifeway and all that you do. Tim, thanks for setting up our meeting and all of our questions, and we'll see you another day.